So Luke chapter 2 begins with verse 1, like most chapters of the Bible do. Not all, but most. Chapters begin with verse 1. And that's important because verse 1 says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. We have this wonderful image that we in the West set up. We have our nativity scene, and we have Jesus in the manger with with Mary and Joseph, and then we've got the angels in the sky singing, and we've got these three wise men standing next to him with gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. Well, it didn't say three wise men. It said magi from the east. Okay, Bethlehem is south of Jerusalem, about 10 miles. What's directly east of Bethlehem? The Mediterranean Sea. Where did these magi come from? Probably from Egypt. They probably came along the southern edge of the Mediterranean and came up following the star. Were there three of them? No, of course not. Why do we picture three of them? Because they brought three gifts. They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But for three people to travel alone on camels through that desert would have been a suicide mission. Just didn't do it. In the 14th century, we learn their names, which means that we have no idea what their names actually were. But these magi were part of a mystical order that was founded in Babylon. They studied scriptural writings of all different religions, but they also studied the scriptures of the Jews. How do we know this? Because they came from wherever it was they came from, and they said, "Where is he who is born King of the Jews?" They understood that when they saw this astronomical conjunction or whatever it was, that was the Star of Bethlehem, and I don't happen to think it was an astronomical conjunction. I think that may have been involved in it, but there's some clues in the text that says the star moved and stopped. I'm guessing it was an angel, probably Gabriel himself, who led them where they needed to be. Why Gabriel? We learned this morning Gabriel's entire mission, everything Gabriel does throughout the whole of the scriptures, is pointing to the coming of the Christ. But these magi brought three gifts. And I want to focus on those three gifts. What did they bring? They brought gold and frankincense and myrrh. Okay. These three gifts all have very specific purposes. Gold is always useful. When they arrived, Matthew chapter 2 verse 1 says, after Jesus was born. Matthew chapter 2 verse 11 says, on coming to the house, they saw the child, not the baby. They saw the child. Jesus was probably a year or two old. He may have gotten up and answered the door for them when they came. But they brought gold and frankincense and myrrh. Who has the gold? The king. The king always has the gold. The king has all the gold. And the king has more gold than he can possibly need. And he's always taking more gold from the people anyway. What's frankincense? Frankincense, the NIV translates it as incense. The King James translates it as frankincense. It's the same thing. Incense, as we all know, is a good smelly stuff that you burn. In the Old Testament, the priests were commanded to burn incense in the temple, and incense would be symbolic of their prayers rising to heaven. Okay? It's not that the smoke actually carried their prayers up. It's not that at all. It's that God wanted to give the people a visual symbol of the effect of their prayers. Now, for that matter, is heaven above us? No. Heaven is greater than we are. Heaven isn't in that direction. Heaven is in every direction. But it makes it easier to think about heaven being above us than about the extra dimensionality of heaven. So, we've got incense, we've got frankincense burning in the temple. Well, gee, who uses frankincense in the temple? The priests. Gold is symbolic of Jesus' kingship. Where is he who was born? King of the Jews. Frankincense is symbolic of the priesthood of Christ. In John chapter 17, Jesus prays a very long prayer before he goes to the cross. It is called his high priestly prayer, because he is in that prayer preparing the people to receive the sacrifice. He's preparing himself, which is the sacrifice, to be made. Jesus is the King of the Jews. Jesus is the high priest. What is myrrh? Myrrh is a plant. It's an oil that's extracted from the myrrh plant. The Hebrew root word for myrrh is the same Hebrew root word for Miriam. And Miriam, we all know, is the name of Jesus' mother, Mary. Okay? When the angel tells Mary in the birth narrative, a sword will pierce your own heart. That's not a verse that's not a phrase we like to look at, because we're looking at this joyous coming of the Christ, and the angel says, and a sword will pierce your own heart too. What do you do with myrrh? With the plant? Sorry? Yes, it's embalming fluid. It's used as a perfume because it smells very nice. It's also used to anoint a dead body to cover up the rotting smell. Gold, symbolic of Jesus' kingship. Frankincense, symbolic of Christ's priesthood. Myrrh, symbolic of Christ's sacrifice. Boy, preacher, you're just making this up, aren't you? Let's go to the book of Psalms. Book of Psalms. We're going to go to chapter 22. We're not going to read all three of these chapters. We're going to look at them briefly. Chapter 22 begins, my God, why have you forsaken me? It contains the verses, my strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death. Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil men has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and my feet. And it ends with the verse, they will proclaim his righteousness to a people yet unborn, for he has done it. When Christ was on the cross, his first words were, my God, why have you forsaken me? Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which comes from Psalm 22, verse 1. When Christ gave up his spirit, he said one final word from the cross. In English, it gets translated into three words. What did he say? It is finished, which comes from Psalm chapter 22, verse 31, for he has done it. Jesus, in his gift of myrrh, fulfills this prophecy of David's. Very, very specifically, It says, they pierced my hands and my feet. Now, Psalm 23. See, we don't have to jump very far. Psalm 22 is myrrh. Psalm 22 is death. Psalm 23, everyone knows the first verse of Psalm 23, which is, the Lord is my shepherd. And how do you say shepherd in Spanish? Pastor. The Lord is my pastor. The Lord is the priest of me. Psalm 22, death. Psalm 23, priesthood. We're developing a pattern here. Psalm 24, less well known, begins, the earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. For he founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. Psalm 24, and who is he, this King of glory? The Lord Almighty, he is the King of glory. Psalm 22, we have death. Psalm 23, we have priesthood. Psalm 24, we have kingship. We have gold. We have frankincense. We have myrrh. Now, what do you suppose? The odds are that was a coincidence. What do you suppose that the wise men had no idea what they were doing? They just thought, well, I've got a bag of gold here, and everybody likes gold, and there's some incense on the shelf there, and oh, there's a myrrh plant on the way out the gate. I'm going to take all three of these things. Where did the Magi come from? They come from a mystical order, and we're already running over time, so I'm going to try to speed this up, and I apologize. They come from a mystical order founded in ancient Babylon, which is the secret, or the source of all arcane and occultic secrets, even in the world today. But who founded the order of the Magi? Belteshazzar, the famous Jewish prophet, otherwise known as Daniel. Now, what does Daniel have to do with the coming of the Messiah? In Daniel chapter 7, we read about his prophecy of 70 weeks where our favorite angel of the day, Gabriel, visits Daniel and gives him a vision of 70 weeks. Now, the Hebrew is not the word week. The Hebrew is the word 7. Why? Because Jews don't have a word for week. Jews use the word 7, right? It's like you drive into your drive, right? They use the same word for both things. Gabriel gives Daniel the prophecy of the 70 weeks. And Gabriel says 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or a total of 69 weeks, are established to establish or are fixed to bring an end to transgressions, to seal up prophecy and transgression, and to anoint the Most High, who is the anointed one. How do you say the anointed one in Hebrew? Everybody said? Okay. I'm failing as a Hebrew teacher, but hopefully I'm doing my job as a pastor. The way you say anointed one in Hebrew is Messiah. Everyone say Messiah. Messiah. Okay. Gabriel tells Daniel the Messiah comes at the end of these 69 weeks. Gabriel says, from the issuing of the order to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, even the street and the trench. That's very important because that order comes very specifically in the book of Nehemiah. To rebuild Jerusalem, the street, and the trench. We studied this in Sunday school a few weeks ago. 69 weeks of years. 69 times 7 for a week. And a Jewish year is 360 days. 69 times 7 times 360 days carry the one is 172,880 days. What happens from the date of the issuing of the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, even the street and the trench, to 173,880 days from that moment? Gabriel said, who would come? The Messiah. And did he come? On that exact day, folks. On that exact day, Jesus rides a donkey into Jerusalem to the shouts of people shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David. And Jesus weeps. Because he says, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, if you had recognized this, even this day, I would have gathered you in. Jesus, in the gospel, makes reference to Daniel's prophecy of the specific day of the coming of the Messiah. Daniel establishes the priesthood of the Magi to prepare them for the day that they saw the star in the east. The Magi see the star and understand. They come to King Herod and they say, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? But not just king. King of the Jews. We saw his star in the east and have come to bring him gifts? No, we have come to worship him. Why would they say that? He's not their king. He's the King of the Jews. Why would they say we have come to worship him? And later on in the passage, why would they, then they opened their treasures, presented him with gold and incense of myrrh. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. My favorite Christmas painting. My favorite Christmas painting. And one of these days I'm going to have a copy and I'm going to hang it in my office. Is a manger on a snowy field. And there's the little baby Jesus in there. And there's Santa Claus kneeling next to the manger, holding his hat in his hands and worshiping the Christ. I don't have time to get into who Santa Claus is. Let me simply say he is a Christian symbol. He's not in the Bible. But don't let anyone shame you out of enjoying Santa Claus. He was a bishop in Turkey in the 3rd century. His name was Saint Nicholas, which we remember in our songs. But the Magi came to worship Jesus. The Magi who understood from ancient texts, from astronomical signs, the Magi who didn't know his name, the Magi who knew only where he would be born, came to worship him. We know his name. We know where he was born. We have our own ancient texts, and our ancient texts tell us that he came. We know that he came because he lives in our hearts and in our lives. We know the rest of the story. Let us come too. Let us worship the baby in the manger. Amen.